All right, well, we're going to get started with our discussion about the new release of the Adobe Technical Communication Suite. And we have several people here for this discussion. So let me introduce them individually and they can tell you a little bit about themselves. So let's start with John Daigle. Hi, John. How are you?
How are you there, Joe? Good to
Where are
see
you
you there.
speaking from today?
Well, I'm from Evergreen, Colorado here in my little cabin, as you can see from the logs in the background, and it's a beautiful Technicolor blue sky as usual.
And, what kind of things do you work on, John?
Working on mostly technical authoring using, of course, Adobe RoboHelp as part of the Technical Communication Suite, as well as Adobe Captivate. Lots of folks are integrating the e-learning modules into their technical documentation now. So it's kind
All
of
right.
equal parts of both.
John does a lot of consulting, contracting, and training in the Adobe space. And so virtually next to him, we have Matt Sullivan. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great.
Where are
Thank you
you
very
at?
much for having me, Joe. I'm out here in San Juan Capistrano in Southern California.
What kind of things are you involved with, Matt?
Well, I work with most of the components of the Technical Communication Suite. I'm actually certified in all of the products, I believe. But I do a lot of Captivate, FrameMaker, and RoboHelp integration between those. And lately, I seem to be speaking mostly on video production for technical communication, and on content marketing, content strategy, basically getting video out into documentation and making that a little bit more effective through the use of rich media.
All right. And next to Matt, we have Scott Prentice. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
All right. Where are you at?
I'm in San Rafael, California, just north of San Francisco.
All right. And tell folks what you're involved with.
Well, I do a lot of FrameMaker plugin development. I do a lot of work with DITA. I'm finally getting my release 2 of my FrameMaker DITA plugin out. DITA FMX2 is almost ready for public consumption, so that's been exciting. And I do a lot of work with EPUBs. A lot of kind of experimenting and just trying new things. So it's just something I've been interested in for a number of years now.
All right, and then finally, last but not least, we have Tony Self. Hi, Tony.
G'day, Joe. How you going?
Everything's going well. Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm at home in Melbourne, in Australia, where we're finally getting some summer. So obviously we're on the wrong side of the world, or the right side of the world, depending on how you look at it. But we've had some cool, what we call cool weather, the last couple of weeks, which has been annoying. But finally we're getting a heat wave. So that's good.
What's been keeping you busy?
Well, being summer here, it's sort of a quiet time this time of year. So I've been doing some e-learning content development and some other little training projects. But my interest is still in help systems, user assistance, and DITA.
All right. Well, this is kind of an informal talk where we're just going to give some of our impressions about different parts of the Technical Communication Suite, being that we were able to be involved in the pre-release time beta testing and things for the product. And so we're recording this actually before the official release date. So let me just check my notes here. All right, we're going to start with the FrameMaker component of TCS, and Matt's going to start us off. So what are some of the things you had to mention about it, Matt?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I wanted to talk on a few points of the new FrameMaker 12 release. The thing that struck me initially, maybe the best, was the ability to publish directly from FrameMaker. I know Scott's going to talk a little bit about EPUB in just a couple of minutes, but the ability to go to, I think it's 5 different formats directly from FrameMaker without any other additional software is it's going to be a real time saver. It's really going to be saving me and my clients a lot of time. I did a FrameMaker 11 book. We'll be doing a FrameMaker 12 book as well. So going out to EPUB in particular directly from FrameMaker is going to save me a little bit of time there. After that, one of the big sells for me on this version is the interface. So overall, not only have I moved to FrameMaker 12, but I also went to new computer system, new operating system, and so I've got a couple of things in the mix there. But overall, everything seems sharper. There's some specific things, the icons and so the icon size and the color of the icons can be modified somewhat. So there's some options there that you can kind of salt to taste on the interface. But overall, it's just a smoother, more legible experience. Probably saved me a little bit of time or a little bit of money on optometry in the coming months or years. So I really like that. Authoring in general, there are some options for putting in things like QR codes. There's going to be a QR code generator in that next version, so not having to go out and do other things. But one thing that I'm sure that we'll hear from John and Tony on as well is the ability to collaborate. And so in FrameMaker, we've got the ability to not only work with content management systems, there's some better integration with what was formerly Adobe CQ, it's Adobe Experience Manager, but we also have the ability to use Dropbox to collaborate and to do some things like that. So, that's going to help everybody out quite a bit as well. To finish up, the structure experience got much better in FrameMaker 11, and now in FrameMaker 12 is even stronger. So with FrameMaker 12, we've got a new authoring application. It's called Adobe XML Author, and you can run FrameMaker in that mode as well. So FrameMaker comes with XML Author, and then it's also available as a standalone project. So that's going to be good. Enhanced support for DITA and for creating DITA maps. So all of that is basically combining to something that there's the new publishing feature, I guess, which is really good and really effective. But overall, it's just a more comfortable, more efficient environment. It's easier for me to stay in that environment for a couple hours at a time without with less fatigue, I guess. So that's kind of how I see FrameMaker 12 shaping up.
I had a question for you
Yeah.
related to the structured so we have the new release. It's obviously a product that's evolved for many, many years, but somebody coming into it right now who wants to embrace what FrameMaker does and specifically structured authoring, but they don't have a background or experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
How would you rate that experience, or what that's going to be for somebody coming into the product? Let's say that a team is already using it at the place that they're starting.
And so somebody who's looking to migrate from, say, a non-XML unstructured environment into some sort of structure?
Maybe an experienced technical communicator, but they're coming into this FrameMaker structured environment.
Well, you've got, there's, structure in general is an easy thing to do inside of FrameMaker. I think that both Tony, we've got two excellent resources for DITA here with Tony and Scott on the line, but the structure models for DITA and for S1000D are really well implemented in FrameMaker 11 and in FrameMaker 12. But in FrameMaker 12, you've got perhaps a smoother experience than we had. For folks that are coming into this and moving to that structured environment, especially if you've got a known content model, it's a very straightforward thing to bring in that XML content. You can save the files in XML format. You can work with XML as your, say, default or de facto file storage format. But when you work with DITA, FrameMaker allows you to work with DITA in a more familiar way than perhaps some other editors. I found personally DITA was almost more philosophy than it was skills on a computer or understanding what the code is, because it's that style of writing. So you've got the component of what your editor is, you've got the standard that you're going to write to, and then you've got that philosophy of how you write. So it's I think it's a good mix, and it's a great way for people to get in. There are a number of ways to get content into Structure easily. Things like Smart Paste in FrameMaker, and some easy ways to automatically structure your content, especially into the DITR format.
Unless anybody have some comments on that, so we could go to Scott. Anybody? All right. Well, Scott, why don't you jump in and give some of your impressions related to FrameMaker?
All right. Yeah, I was really excited when I found out that Frame 12 was going to have be able to publish directly to EPUB. And you've been able to do that for a while now through RoboHelp, but now you've got this publish menu that lets you publish to EPUB, Kindle, HTML help, let's see, web help, responsive help, a lot of different outputs. And so you go straight from Frame out to the desired format. And my, one of my things right now is digging into EPUB tools. And so I've been really annoying all the help vendors by looking at the EPUB that their tools create and picking it apart. And so I did the same with Frame, and RoboHelp has always produced probably the best EPUB that you can get from a tool. Now, if you've been to any of my talks about EPUB, you'll know that doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect, but it is the closest you're going to get to a really nice EPUB out of the box. And so now that they've incorporated a lot of that RoboHelp into Frame, I'm assuming a lot of what's in Frame came directly from RoboHelp, since it seems pretty similar. If you want to do a lot of fancy stuff in your output, you still need to go through RoboHelp. But for EPUB, I think just going straight from Frame works quite well. And so you can just get the sort of the straight out of the box publishing output for an EPUB, and what that'll do is try and emulate what you've got, the formatting in your Frame template. Typically, that isn't what you want in an EPUB. Your EPUB needs to be really lean and be able to flow from small screen to small screen. You don't want something that has margins and all kinds of stuff. So unfortunately, that's kind of it's not the best default in my opinion. I would love to see some default that said strip out all formatting. Just give me paragraphs and some basic inline formatting. And I'm working with some of the vendors on that. I've talked to Adobe about trying to get this to be a bit cleaner. I think one of the best ways that you can get nice EPUB out of Frame is to import a new template into your documents. And so clone your template and strip out all the indents, strip out all the fancy formatting. And so when you want to generate your EPUB output, just import a new template, and it will probably do a decent job. If you want to control it more, you can still affect the style mapping. And if you have a lot of styles, that can be kind of tedious, but it'll give you exactly what you want. So it's I'm excited. I think it's a great thing to be able to just export an EPUB directly from Frame. You don't have a lot of tools involved. You don't have a lot of steps involved. And if what you're trying to do is just produce some nice usable online an ebook, that's a great way to do it. So I think there are things that need to be adjusted, and I've been working with Adobe on that, but they still my first test with any tool is to send it through the EPUB check tool. And for many years now, output from RoboHelp and now from Frame produces the least amount of errors. They all still produce errors, but you get fewer from this new output format. So you know, that's one step at a time.
Well, we are going to come back to talking about the new Beast XML author, but let's get John in here and just pop over to the RoboHelp area for a bit and get some of his impressions about that part of the tool. So John, what do you have to tell us about?
Sure. Well, there are sort of three main areas that are either very new or much improved in Adobe RoboHelp 12 or 11 now. One is the ability to share entire topics and all the pieces with them, with other authors using a cloud-based location. The other is tremendous improvement and refinements in printed documentation and being able to get just the look and feel that you want in your printed documentation. After all, as a single sourcing tool, the primary use of RoboHelp has always traditionally been online, but there's still a lot of folks out there who have the requirement for printed documentation, and there's been a huge improvement in getting that. The third area is something that I'm going to chat a little bit about here and then hand it off to Tony, who's going to talk more about it, and that is something called responsive layouts. This is the way to address the folks that are being tapped on the shoulder. Hey, how can we view all of this content on an iPad or an iPhone or my Samsung Galaxy, whatever? And so that can be rather daunting to somebody who just isn't that familiar with CSS3 and HTML5 and media queries and all of these strange new terms. And so RoboHelp has the last release came out with something a multi-screen HTML5 that was basically an interesting way to accommodate each mobile device separately. So I could have a version for iPad, a version for iPhone or whatever. But of course, that means that you have to pay attention to those particular peculiarities of those devices. And as we all know, those devices don't stay put. They keep multiplying, as do the screen sizes. And so we're going more into now what is called a responsive layout. So sort of backtracking, so those are the several things I wanted to chat about. If I can remember how to screen share properly here, let me see if I can share my screen. And
Yeah, John, you can't get away without talking about that new user interface.
yes, you know, it seems like such a small, subtle thing, but the really cool thing is that they have, let's see, I'm trying to see how to get that particular screen to show up. So let's see.
Let me know, John, if you want me to show that.
Yeah. So essentially, that would be a good idea, Matt, if you could do that.
Okay.
Naturally, we rehearsed this and it worked flawlessly.
Of course.
So so you're bringing up the, okay. So essentially, the first thing I wanted to chat about was what we call the resource manager. So Matt, if you could kind of open up the resource manager and maybe pin it so we could see that. So essentially, the issue is this. Ever since I can remember, technical authors have wanted to have a way of collaborating and working with other authors, especially now. It's even more commonplace for people to working with other authors. And so there have been things like version control, source control, which typically have been the purview of developers, programmers. And the poor technical authoring team was kind of left to their own devices without all the fancy software to keep track of all this. And so if they were, it was a rather daunting task to try to set up source control and what have you. So there's nothing wrong with source control. It's just that sometimes it's kind of overblown for what you really need. And so what we now have available to us in the Resource Manager is the ability to store entire topics, not just a file, but a topic and everything related to it in a cloud-based location. So it could be Dropbox, it could be SkyDrive or Google Drive, as Matt is showing there. And so essentially, the other cool thing about that is that you don't even have to be on the same network as someone else. So, you know, it's not just being on some shared network drive or SharePoint for that matter, which you could also do, but this cloud-based. And so once you connect, and it's just as simple as a couple of seconds to set that up, that means that you can drag and drop topics from the Resource Manager, where it's stored in the cloud, drop it into your Project Manager, as Matt's showing there, and then that topic and everything with it. So the style sheet, the little graphics, multimedia, whatever might be associated with that topic is brought in as well, so that however many authors there may be working on it, if they make a change, then the icons will change in the RoboHelp Authors Project Manager there, letting them know, hey, you need to update this. Someone has been working on it and changed it. And so it will change from green to red, a red X saying, uh-oh, that topic has been changed by someone else. And then you simply right-click on that topic, say synchronize, and voila, it's done, and vice versa. So it's a much simpler way to handle this issue of multiple authors working on the same project at the same time. And I was very impressed during the pre-release where we had a chance to test this at how smoothly that worked. And what's also kind of nice is that, let's say once you do bring the topic into your project, you say, you know, they have they being whoever created that topic, had a certain style sheet. I want everything, but I want a different style sheet. So in other words, what's cool about it is that you can deliberately unlink just the style sheet, as an example, so that everything else remains in sync with you, except you can have whatever style sheet you want. So there's a lot of customization while you're still sharing the topics with the team. So that's a big deal, and I think people are going to be very surprised when they start seeing this and working with it. The second thing, Matt, if you go to the project setup pod, as we lovingly call it there, project setup, yep, there you go. And if you'll open up screen profiles, you'll notice there that it says desktop, phone, tablet, and so forth. Now, this is what I was describing earlier that we had in previous releases. It was great in the sense that we did have a mobile solution, but we had to pay far more attention to the particular device that we were trying to aim the content to. Now, Matt, if you'll open up screen layouts right underneath there.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
that's all right.
I was playing around with the old multi-screen, or the
right. That
pre-existing multi-HTML.
Right, and that, by the way, is still there, and there are still valid reasons to use that. By the way, there's nothing wrong with multi-screen.
Sure.
Sometimes
if you know that your people are going to have to use a specific device. If you're a corporate client, you know everybody's on iPhones or everybody's on a Samsung Note, then you can target that specific device.
Absolutely. So that freedom of customization is still there. But what's been added is what is called a responsive layout. And so, for example, Matt, if you'll take a look at I think it's the last in your screen layout, it's called responsive layout. Right click on that. This is just the one that comes out of the box, and then select Edit. There you go. So one of the things that folks liked in the last release about the mobile output was this ability to have a mobile-friendly output. However, they asked for more flexibility as far as color schemes, branding, logos. You know, one of the things I can always remember about RoboHelp is that everybody just loved that WebHelp skin editor because it was just effortless to change colors, logos, and what have you. That new, more sophisticated multi-screen layout editor took a little bit more savvy as far as working with CSS and what have you. So what's happened now is, Matt, if you will select header, the first item up there in the layouts. So there you'll notice there is a visual, you know, graphic representation, a legend, so to speak, of all of the different pieces. So every color, every font, every icon that you see there can be changed. And not that you have to, it's just that it gives you the ability to do that if you like.
You
So
know
you
everybody
can-
wants to.
Right, exactly. So anyway, that's the concept behind the layout editor, and so that everybody can get the look and feel that they want.
Let's
So those are the
yeah, let's stop there for a minute. And Tony's been sitting on his hands this whole time, and I know this is an area that he's interested in. So, Tony, what do you think about all this?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit philosophically about the responsive layout or responsive web design generally, which is the philosophy underpinning it. Matt talked before about data being more of a philosophy than a technology, and the same can be said for responsive web design because it's really an approach, a different approach to handling different device sizes and configurations. And it's implemented through HTML5 and CSS3. And as John pointed out, previously this was handled through the multi-screen HTML5 layouts in RoboHelp. And that was probably more of an adaptive web design approach. And so in general, adaptive says that there's some sort of browser sniffer that determines what the characteristics of the display monitor is, and then chooses an appropriate set of output files to display for that user. Whereas, and so from that point of view, it's like a single sourcing. You have a single source, and then you produce multiple outputs for Android and for iPad and for iPhone and so on. Responsive takes a different approach, and it uses CSS3 media queries to provide a single output that rejigs itself according to the available screen real estate. So the media query might say, if the screen is more than 800 pixels wide, then arrange the columns in this way. If it's less than 600 pixels, then do it in this way and maybe hide this other configuration, or maybe change the menu system. So instead of having a table of contents on the left, it maybe it might have a drop-down table of contents at the top. And I think that philosophically that's a much better idea than the old adaptive approach. And I guess the adaptive was the first step along the path. So how do we approach the challenge of multiple screen dimensions or multiple devices? And so adaptive was response 1, and responsive is the second attempt at that. And I think it's much slicker and much nicer. From a RoboHelp perspective, and as John pointed out, there still would be legitimate reasons why you might continue to use multi-screen HTML5. But in general, the new responsive output is far superior. And also, as John showed, the editor, the layout editor, is much cleaner and slicker as well. So it's easier to work with those layouts. And but an important point to make is that the layouts for multi-screen HTML5 are incompatible with the layouts for responsive output. So if you have invested a lot of time doing your multi-screen HTML5 layouts, you might need to redo some of that work. But as we pointed out, it's a lot simpler to do that with the responsive editor, layout editor in RoboHelp. So that's really all I needed to say. I think at that point it was more the philosophical side of things. And for those that are interested in that and interested in other philosophies, so we talked about DITA and responsive web design. There's a few others. Minimalism is obviously another one, but another one for people interested in this area would be a philosophy called mobile first, which is sort of also being progressively added to RoboHelp, which is that rather than design for a desktop and then gracefully degrade the content to get to a mobile output, then the philosophy is the other way around, to say, let's start with mobile and then progressively enhance the output until you get to a full-blown desktop layout with hundreds of thousands of pixels. So, so if you are interested in that, that's another area. Mobile first and responsive web design are very interesting areas for people involved with user assistance.
Right.
Anybody have any
One thing that I thought I would just throw out is that one of the things that I've noticed a lot of my students are not familiar with is something called the reviewer's guide. So many of the products, whether it be FrameMaker or TCS5 itself, or certainly RoboHelp, these are quite detailed. They're not so much tutorials as they are much more clear explanations of the particular features, so that if someone, let's say they're new to RoboHelp or new to FrameMaker, maybe they're evaluating, gee, is this the way we should go? I would really encourage them to download those. A lot of them include videos inside them to sort of do show me's, this is how it works. And I think you'll find that that, along with, good old using the trials, will help you evaluate one tool as opposed to another, or a sort of a workflow that works for you. So I would just simply throw that out, and I simply noticed that a lot of my students just aren't even aware that they exist. So just a little tip there: look for the reviewer's guide.
There, John, it's good that you mentioned that. And, might I say, I really like the voice of that RoboHelp Reviewer's Guide narrator in some of those videos.
Oh, really?
But yeah, just to that point, if you look at the product pages, and this was true on the TCS4 applications, it will continue to be true, but look for the link called Getting Started Guide, I believe. It's something to that effect. So Getting Started Guide will bring up the PDF file with embedded rich media that is the reviewer's guide for the point products for RoboHelp and FrameMaker. I believe there's one on Captivate, but I haven't seen that on the product page. And then also at the TCS product page, the Technical Communication Suite also has its own reviewer's guide as well.
Hey, this is Joe. We'll get back to the program in just a minute, but I wanted to plug our upcoming event, Writers UA West, coming up in Palm Springs, California at the start of March. Even if you don't have a chance to get to a conference, it always helps us if you can help spread the word, because that helps pay the bills for these shows. But I hope you can make it. We've got a great crew for our conference. We have over 30 speakers. A lot of the people that you may be familiar with from past events, but I think we have a lot of new faces, new ideas, new innovative ways of thinking about user assistance. So you can find all of that on our website. We also have a lot of sessions over several different interest areas covering all different aspects of user assistance, which is one of the things that I think we pride ourselves with this event, is taking a really diverse view of what it means to provide user assistance and providing a lot of practical design and implementation information for our attendees. Where we're going to be at is just a great place in Palm Springs, the Renaissance Resort, which is where we were in 2006. It's a really fun hotel right by downtown Palm Springs at a pretty moderate price. and it's definitely a beautiful area. And if you've been having some tough winter weather, that I think you'll have a good time. Palm Springs is just a great place to visit. You can find a lot of information about that on our website. We are going to be having a formal exhibition so that you can meet with many of our authoring tool vendors and get the latest scoop on what they have going on. We'll be having our project showcase as we have it in the past from a variety of practitioners, 12 people who will be talking about their individual projects. The agenda this year is going to take place over 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And that's all included for one price. So there's no extra costs. Just register for with the one price, and you will get access to all of the activities that we have going on. And of course, for the last two conferences that we've put on, all of this is covered by video, which is only going to be available to registered attendees. And that video gives you the synced video and slides for all of the sessions that are going on in the conference. So that's included at no extra price. You don't have to pay any surcharges for that information. It's all included with your one price registration. So the 4 days, the video, everything that we're going to do for one price. So we hope to be able to see you there. And now we'll get back to the program. Oh, and again, even if you don't make it to the conference, if you can get a tweet, note out to your colleagues in any way, LinkedIn, that's really helpful. And we appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, let's see. We have one thing that's been added and one thing that's been taken out. So let me just start with the one that was taken out, which is Illustrator, which kind of surprised me. I think that was a recent decision to not have that in the suite. So the product is still there as Photoshop is, although they're not in the suite. But yeah, that one kind of surprised me. I thought Illustrator fits in well with the technical communication suite. Yeah. I mean, I realize that it's probably a relatively small percentage of people that use that product, but I thought it was a good product. I thought it fit in there well. It's still going to be a good product. Yeah, and I don't have any insider knowledge on
that one.
Pardon me?
Well, I was just wondering if I could kind of take the reins on that one.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've been involved in the last couple of releases, and I know when they were throwing around putting Photoshop into the suite, and everybody's really excited because you got to put roller skates on your dog and make sure you take out telephone poles out of family pictures and stuff. But then I also liked when they went to Illustrator as well. I was kind of a fan of that. Some people didn't like it, but Illustrator makes more sense. We don't, as technical communicators, we don't do a lot of airbrushing and retouching and color correction. But I think what I've seen is because the Illustrator product, along with Photoshop and the rest of the Creative Suite, went to the Creative Cloud versions. There really is no longer a version, quote unquote, that you can put into the release. So kind of, two things happen there. One is the dynamics and the politics of it, I imagine, made it a little bit more difficult to get it in the suite. But in removing something that people had a mixed opinion on anyway, they were able to really significantly reduce the costs across the board of TCS, of the component products, and the subscription-based model as well. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think TCS dropped for version 5 dropped by about $200 US, and with drops in FrameMaker, RoboHelp, etc. As I don't know about the point products, but the subscription also dropped down. So the yearly subscription.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Is that and I don't know what that was the reason or whatever, but yeah, apparently that was a big part of being able to reduce the price, was not having that in there.
Yeah, it's Illustrator doesn't share in the revenue model from TCS anymore, and that was part of the reason for the increase a few versions ago, was putting Photoshop and then Illustrator in. So, but the for those that don't already own some of these products, the subscription model is something that if I didn't already own them, I think I'd be going that route. I think it's so it's $49-ish a month US for a 1-year subscription, and versus the price of the product, I think I worked out the math to just about 3 years to level out the cost of the product versus the monthly subscription cost. So some interesting financials and dynamics in the financing and acquisition of the software there.
Yeah, well, yeah, since you bring that up, that is something that, that's worth talking about. Is there's the I think it's $49.95. There's no contract for that. Is my understanding. So you could just use the when I speaking with Vikram, I believe he said you could just use it for 2 months if you wanted to, and if that there's nothing holding to you for that. So that obviously can provide some flexibility. I'm not sure about this, but I think with the Creative Suite, that the subscription model is the only thing that you have now, whereas with TCS you can still buy it outright. But obviously the more and more of the software industry is going toward that subscription model, and I guess one of the big things that you should get with that, and I don't know if Adobe's ready for this now, is that you're getting dynamic updates to your software as opposed to, well, in this case, 18 months to your next version. So I don't know if that'll be different, but that's one of the things that is the promise of subscription-based software as well.
Yeah, on the CC, that's what they do on the CC versions, is they have quite regular drops for new features. So it enables that fresher feel rather than having that, that really traditionally 18-month gap between items. John, you had something to say?
Well, it's just that when this first came out, not so much the technical communication suite, but just the Creative Cloud CS suite, there was a lot of pushback and controversy and, hey, wait a minute, what are they forcing us to do this, or we can't do this anymore? And I was on that team, by the way. I was kind of put off at first when I, confronted it. And then what happened was I happened to, I used Captivate a lot. And so I noticed that I was getting these updates like 6.1 and so forth more often. And what was interesting there is that these weren't just little bug fixes or whatever. These were like major improvements that if I was not on the subscription and rather on the so-called perpetual license,
no access,
I wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
And then that also made me think of the old Netscape days. Remember when Netscape was just getting started and it seemed like every week
How old are you, John?
Dirt. He's older than dirt.
Don't tell me.
Oh, that's
Joe.
right. Yeah, you just had your big birthday.
Right. But I mean, the whole idea that software development is moving so rapidly now that this offers a way to keep up. Think of how many of the students and folks that we work with who have to go to their boss, go to management, say, hey, we really need this, and we've got to put in for an upgrade. And somebody says, well, wait a minute, you just 6 months ago asked for me for an upgrade. Now you want another one? The point is, it really reduces the friction of all of that, keeping things up to date. So I've kind of,
bought in,
accustomed to it. So
drank the Kool-Aid. Huh?
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Right. But I mean, there's benefit from it, is my point.
And you can still roll back, which is interesting. I saw this recently regarding a Photoshop update, that you have the ability. So basically, Adobe is now compiling your installer on the fly and delivering it to you. So you can go back and roll back to a previous version for those CC applications.
Well, so that was our piece taken out, but then a piece that we have added in is this thing called XML Author. So I don't know, Matt or Scott, which one of you want to kind of give a overview of what that's all about?
Maybe I'll do the high level.
Okay.
I haven't really used it much, but XML Author is so it's a great lightweight editor for things that for people that don't need all of the management and need to produce all of that material, you have something that authors can use. So you'll set up your environment and you'll create content, and it puts you in the middle of it and just lets you just bang it out. So that's a really great thing to be able to do. When you look at the FrameMaker 12 product, you can open up FrameMaker in an XML author. It's not a workspace, but you basically restart into structured, unstructured, or XML author. And so that gives you those options without having to install 2 applications on it. I know, Scott, you've had some experience with that, so I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah, no, XML Author is a mode in full FrameMaker, but it's also a separate standalone product.
Yep.
And you know, the intent is that this is being positioned to compete with other XML editors that would typically be, you know, might be a lower cost, and you know, somebody's trying to say, well, gee, I need 50 FrameMaker licenses. If I compare that to some other XML editor, I could spend a lot less. And so what you can do is you can have, you know, 1 or 2 full FrameMaker licenses for the kind of the administrators, the people who really need to manage the templates and the structure applications. And then you can install XML Author for everybody else, because all they're doing is authoring XML. They're not working in frame binary files. And so that's the big thing, is when you're working in XML Author, you cannot open a frame, you know, an FM file. You can only work with XML files. So, you know, if that's your job, if that's all you do, then that's the perfect tool, and you can spend a lot less. I don't actually remember what the price is, but it is considerably less than the full frame price. So that's really its intent. And you know, it's not for the single, you know, for the small,
Like the standalone
place where you've just got 1 or 2, you know, seats of FrameMaker. It's for the larger office where you need to, you know, get a bunch of people just authoring XML. So, you know, it's just, they just broke that out, and you know, it's a nice solution for that situation. Yeah.
Anybody have any comments, other comments about that? So if you were, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, we haven't talked about we haven't talked about Presenter at all either, and so if that comes up, we can talk about the PowerPoint plugin that's included as well.
Go for it.
Well, that's one thing that as I'm working with a lot of technical communication and video, I work with teams to kind of migrate and include more video in their TechCom. You've got what seems like a really kind of a lightweight thing, but it's a plugin that gives you an extra ribbon inside of PowerPoint. And for Captivate users, this is some that say John, for instance, being a Captivate expert, would be able to pick up and use just as is right out of the box. And so you can take your PowerPoint content and then just jam it right out to LMS and produce the same sorts of stuff that you would do with a Captivate scenario based lesson, and then you can produce that and use it without even having to go to Captivate.
Did you have any chance to judge whether it adds any noticeable overhead or
to PowerPoint itself?
Yeah, I know, like some plugins that I'd use for PowerPoint, just like,
right.
I mean, you never think of PowerPoint as having like high performance or whatever, because it's kind of passive. But when I put in plugins, suddenly it's like, wow, I can't even just scroll through my slides anymore because all this other crap's going on in the background.
No, I really have. I've been using it for a couple of years, and so I haven't ever noticed really a degradation. PowerPoint's always been snappy, you know, to my eye. The thing that I think is really cool, it's kind of analogous to what we're doing here with flipping back and forth and doing screen sharing. I will take, it's something I have up on my YouTube channel at TC2LS is the username for YouTube. But a PowerPoint presentation recorded with Presenter, where I just do something like this, and I can do a split screen, and I can do basically just a straight recording of me talking about my PowerPoint slides. And as I go through and do that and talk about the PowerPoint slides themselves, the video cam's capturing me. And then I go back and really quickly cut in and zoom in on my content, maybe spending, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes cutting out and directing the video. You come up with something that goes in and out, and it's got all of the, I mean, you get full screen, you get split screen, you come back in and out like that, you go in on the content. And it makes for a really powerful PowerPoint deliverable. And I think something that using other tools would be really difficult. I've not had, John, maybe you've worked on similar stuff in Captivate. I think it's got some features that that even Captivate doesn't have in that regard.
Well, as I look at it, we used to mock poor PowerPoint and say death by PowerPoint,
Yeah.
because so many folks didn't know how to present it and so forth. Well, to me right now with video, we have death by potted palm. So, somebody's stuck a palm tree and to make a little set. And so basically you have a talking head like we are right now.
Right.
But what Matt's talking about is that you're recording your screen motion at the
Yeah, it adds
same
motion.
time.
Exactly.
So you're really capturing two completely different videos at the same time, which allows you to mix and match. So why would we use a talking head? We would use them. Okay, there might be a credibility factor. Maybe there's an expert. Maybe there's somebody that you want to. And let's face it, there's an engagement thing there. There's a person.
Sometimes you need to spend more than 10 seconds talking about a topic, and when you're doing that, all of a sudden the screen is just dead.
Right.
So you can flip back and forth between that. It's really powerful.
It really is, and it adds a lot of credibility. E-learning. Hey, e-learning is still a wild, wild west out there, and frankly, I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. But the idea of engaging the learner, that there's real people involved here and not some hippy-dippy weatherman, announcer type person, just reading a script. You have a real person who's interested in helping you learn. And so in that engagement, I think is where it really comes in.
Definitely helps to connect. Yeah.
Any other thoughts about anything?
I personally, I have not been a FrameMaker, practitioner. I've used it obviously, but RoboHelp has been my thing, and Captivate. And so I've noticed that I'm using FrameMaker more, and a lot of my clients are using FrameMaker, and so they're asking me to use it. And so I'm really kind of impressed with the integration. In other words, I can easily link a FrameMaker file to my RoboHelp project. And I was rather surprised how easy it was to do. So as a sort of novice FrameMaker person, I was impressed with the integration that Adobe's been putting into the different products, so that they work together. So that was just my little personal observation.
Yeah, I think that the integration of the publishing outputs, the RoboHelp type publishing outputs directly from Frame is a nice thing. It kind of blurs that line. You can just get it straight out of FrameMaker, or you can go into RoboHelp and spend a bit more time and really fine tune things. But just you can get what you want. It depends on what level of control you want from your output as to what you would use. But now instead of being forced to always go through RoboHelp, if you just need something quick and dirty, or maybe not so dirty, you can get pretty fine stuff directly out of the published from Frame. So just gives you more options, and I think that's really nice.
Well, both Scott and John were talking about both the interface between the two of them and the individual products. But Scott mentioned real briefly that, hey, you can take your time to go in and do mapping. And I think for anybody that's going to do that output of I think it's the 5 most popular formats that they put into FrameMaker directly, doing your mapping is the number one thing you should do, because getting rid of all of that inline code out of your HTML and your structure is it's mandatory. You have to do it. You don't want your EPUB to look what you thought you wanted your FrameMaker doc to look like,
No,
including
no.
font
Two
calls
totally
and
different
just,
worlds.
oh yeah, and the bloat is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, you get rid of all that bloat by doing the mapping. So I would encourage anybody who does this stuff, map out your paragraph form, you map out all of your styles, whether you're using FrameMaker only or using FrameMaker in conjunction with RoboHelp. And this is something I've been doing for a long time because I had an 800-page book I did via FrameMaker RoboHelp to EPUB. So your comments to the EPUB check validator were I was smiling if you roll back the film on that one.
Yeah.
But there's still a huge reason to do the FrameMaker to RoboHelp integration, because as you're doing the FrameMaker to RoboHelp integration, you have the ability to what I call make notes on your workflow and your outputs. So with FrameMaker, I can, shuffle all my conditional text settings and produce an EPUB, and shuffle them again and produce another EPUB or help or whatever. When I link to RoboHelp, this is kind of where I still have like a pot of gold in that whole FrameMaker to RoboHelp connection. Connecting my FrameMaker stuff to RoboHelp lets me make notes in all the single source layouts we were looking at earlier. All those single source layouts can be set up. There's like 17 different formats RoboHelp can put out. And along with 17 formats, I can produce as many conditional versions, maybe for feature sets or geography or time-based settings. I can produce all of those different combinations of help systems and have the notes already made and stored in RoboHelp. I think that's the coolest, for me, it's the coolest part of RoboHelp. And then I can do a batch generate, and I can publish, I can regenerate and push most of those formats to their final location, whether it's a sandbox or whether it's a final publishing server, with perhaps not a single push button, but with a turnkey interface where I check, and hit publish and walk away as it does all the different, permutations and combinations and delivery of that material as well. So there's a big production, value in being able to map out, to discreetly and in fine detail, map out that process all the way end to end and have it stored and repeatable for the inevitable changes to formatting and content.
I want to just toss out something about kind of data in general, and then what you think of the state of the art with respect to the TCS. And I know in a survey that I do every year on a Writers UA website, we ask about different technologies, and for the last couple of years, it's the people that have indicated they actively work with DITA is about 20%, about 1 out of 5 of us. And then anecdotally, when I talk to people who are either using it or not, it, like, the people that aren't using it, it's just that they either have no idea what it's about, or it hasn't come into their sphere, or it doesn't fit at all what they want it to do, and it's not an issue. And then that 20% that are using it, there's usually this total buy-in where it's kind of did everything, and we're really, committing our resources to this because
Back to the
of,
Kool-Aid.
what we're getting out of the
Yeah.
back end. So, looking at both of those groups, kind of very different groups. I mean, where is TCS fitting in? Is it adequately supporting that high end user group? Does it have any way of bringing people to it that aren't in that group? Maybe, I don't know, Tony. You've done a lot of work with DITA. Do you have any thoughts, maybe generally, about where things are at with this issue?
Yeah, I think the every time a version of FrameMaker is released, it has more and more DITA support, or more and more features, and so the different outputs in this version is a good example of that. So, to answer your question about does this version of TCS or introducing people into the DITA world, does this remove barriers? I suppose it does, because if you're perhaps an unstructured FrameMaker user and you want to move to DITA, then as you've got the familiarity with the tool already, then it means that you don't have to necessarily learn a new tool in order to migrate to DITA. You can stay in the tool that you're familiar with and then move to structured and then on to DITA from that point of view. One of the things that I think is a strength of DITA is that ultimately it's just a standard. And so it doesn't really matter what tool you're using to produce your DITA content with. And so I think it's great that FrameMaker is an absolutely viable choice and a good choice for DITA authoring. So it's and it produces, you know, compliant output and so there's no, or sorry, compliant DITA source, and it provides a sophisticated interface for you to work with when you're creating your content. One of the criticisms in the past was probably that it was very page layout focused, in that being essentially or at heart being a tool that allowed you to produce paper documents or PDF documents, whereas DITA is more neutral. FrameMaker still had that emphasis
Kind of
towards
that wrap.
the page layouts. Yeah. So and I'm like John, I don't use FrameMaker, so I use an alternative DITA authoring tool. So perhaps Matt or Scott might like to comment on whether this is now sort of whether the new version of FrameMaker is less page layout focused or not.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. Yeah, I think the whole page layout thing is really more of you know, it's in people's minds. It's not a FrameMaker thing. You know, FrameMaker is an authoring tool. It provides methods for producing beautiful page layouts, but that's because that's pretty much all there was before you started working with DITA. So it's not that Frame is page layout centric, it's just that it has a lot of features that provide that, but it also, you know, you define the template that you're authoring with. You define, you know, what that looks like, and so you can remove all of the page specific features if you want. And you could do that with Frame 7.2. You know, that's nothing new. There are new features in Frame, though, that take that further. You have an XML author view. This is different than the XML author mode. I don't know if those are the two different terms, but you know, basically this author mode lets you, it removes the page limitation essentially. So it's just a big long scrolling hunk of text.
Scott, do you think that's like the mode? They're like the reading mode in Microsoft Word. I think there's an analogy there.
Perhaps, yeah. It is kind of just like a stream of text. Yep. And so, but I really think that whole thing just is a perceived limitation. It's not really a limitation with the product. And you know, I think Frame has two big benefits when it comes to DITA authoring. One is if you're producing PDF output, you cannot get better PDF cheaper or easier than you can with Frame. And that's despite the fact that you can use things like XSLFO, which is free, but it really will end up costing you much, much more than buying Frame. And, you know, you've probably got people, you know, in-house that know how to develop Frame templates. You know, you've got all this expertise, you might as well leverage it. So if you're doing PDFs, Frame is a you know, great solution for that. But also, if you're trying to get other kinds of output from DITA, sure, you can use the DITA Open Toolkit. That's actually what I use for most of my output. I'm kind of a Cody guy, so I'm not afraid of digging in and writing my own plugins and tweaking XSLT. If that isn't something you want to do, if you're working in Frame, you can publish through RoboHelp and get really nice output of all types, quite easily. So, it just depends on what you want. And like Tony was saying, DITA is just the format. People give DITA more, they elevate it to be a tool, and it's not. It's just a format. And so, if you're working with compliant DITA, you can work on any authoring tool you want. You can have a mix of tools in-house. You can work with Frame and Oxygen and whatever. Use whatever tools you want for publishing. Use the tool that makes the most sense for your needs. Don't be hung up on what you think the tool is all about. And figure out what works best for you. Okay, I'll get off my
Scott.
soapbox.
Yeah, you were talking about output to PDF from DITA, and as you and I both know, that's FrameMaker can pay for itself just in the ability to do just that. But the customization of the output, it's aside from just creating turnkey stuff, the customization, the easy customization with the FrameMaker templates that you can do, really straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's interested in finding out how to do that, I did an Adobe webinar, must have been 3-4 months ago. You can find it on the Technical Communications Suite blog, the Adobe TCS TechCom blog, or get in touch with me and I can point you to the recording on that as well. It's less than an hour, shows you how to do some real simple stuff with PDF output from DITA.
All right, cool. Well, I think we covered a lot of stuff. We've been grinding away for over an hour, so it's probably a good time unless somebody wants to jump in with something to pull a pin on the grenade. Okay, so
Easy, Joe.
I'll thank everybody that was involved. So that was we had.
I'm the one with the hoodie on, yeah.
So say goodbye to Matt and of course John, Scott, and Tony, and me. And so that's the end of this segment. Thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you guys another time.
All right, thanks, Joe.
Thanks a lot for the
Thanks,
information.
everybody. Nice chatting.
Good to see you.